G'day jabronis, it is the Verd, back with you again. Welcome here to a bit of a different video. This is kind of unexpected, I know, but we have a recap of a TCG draft league that had been started up just by some guys in South Australia. I'm joined by one of them, Jordan Palmer. Say hello, Jordan.
How's it going, Sam? Good to be here.
Yeah, so Jordan, you guys would know very well from the Sableyes YouTube channel. Obviously, Jordan and I play in the South Australian TCG scene, or we did before the whole virus has kind of come down and Thanos snapped our entire season up. But Jordan had already, easily qualified for Worlds. I think he had 2 top 4 regional finishes. So, you know, what are you gonna do? Meanwhile, me getting a top 32 once.
Oh, hey, at least you're in a pretty good spot for next season.
Yeah, for sure, man. It would have been cool to qualify this season, given playing maybe less than a year of the game. But
yeah,
I don't mind. This gives us a good chance to test some new stuff. So maybe
it's a good chance to do stuff like this.
Exactly. So Jordan, I kind of came into this whole thing a bit later in the idea of it, I suppose. So do you want to try and explain to people how this all kind of came about?
Oh, it was really just it was mostly just a bunch of the Sydney players like Brent Thompson and a couple others who messaged me saying that they had this idea for a fun format they wanted to try out while got a bit of a downtime in the Pokemon trading card game competitive scene. So and invited me on to do a practice draft. So I had a lot of fun with that. We didn't really end up doing much of it. We basically just chose cards, played like 1 or 2 games just to try it out, see if it worked, and obviously it ends up going pretty well. So I decided to try and implement it with our local scene, getting a bunch of the Adelaide players on board, including yourself. And yeah, here we are after we've chosen our cards.
Yeah, so basically the way the draft worked, guys, was we got to choose from Sun and Moon base set up to Sword and Shield. We could pick any cards that we wanted. However, we couldn't choose tag teams. Tag team GXs we couldn't choose,
Correct.
and we couldn't choose V or VMAX cards. Everything else was open slather. However, if you picked a GX Pokemon, you only got 1 copy of it, and if you picked any other card, you got 2 copies of it.
Yep.
So yeah, we went through and we all had 40 picks each. So as you can see, we've drafted a full 40 cards at our disposal. So potentially up to 80 cards that we could then build into a deck of 60, depending on if no GXs were taken. And we're kind of going to discuss everyone's drafts and see, if we feel like people have done a good job. I for one, Jordan thankfully helped me out with this draft. I think 3 hours before the draft happened, Jordan sat down with me and basically gave me a rundown of Sun and Moon base set to, is it Burning Shadows? Is that the last set before
I think
Ultra
it was
Prism?
either Shining Legends or Crimson Invasion. Was the
Crimson
last
Invasion,
one.
that's the one. Yeah, Crimson Invasion. So yeah,
I'm
he
not
gave me a
surprised you picked up
rundown.
that one. It wasn't very good.
I don't know, but he gave me a rundown of all the cards that were kind of busted in the previous formats. So I was like, okay, I think I have a decent idea of what to draft. So we just kind of went into it, and here's what we got. So obviously we'll maybe start with Adrian since he's on the closest side. He had the first pick of the entire draft, and he picked DCE. I think that's a pretty respectable first pick for a draft.
It certainly is. I mean, I don't know if it's like the best card in the game to pick first. I feel like there might be other good cards to pick, but Adrian obviously had an idea for exactly what he wanted to build, and Double Color Sanji is a pretty important card in his idea. It looks like he wanted to go with kind of a spreading archetype, as we see that a little bit later down. He takes the Tapu Koko with Flying Flip really early, as well as Wheezing with Detention Gas. We also see both of the Pessimians, so he's going with the Pessimian Koko package. So all of these cards realistically require Double Color Sanji to work.
Yeah, for sure. We can, yeah, like you said, we definitely see a theme Adrian went with here, which was I'm going to spread damage, and it's just very annoying for us, obviously. In a format where we don't have a lot of big attacks that can take multiple prizes, these 1 prize decks that can spread all this damage can be incredibly strong. He also picked up like Oricorio GX, so if, the Wheezings go down, he just draws 3 cards. Fortunately, he didn't have access to a card like Special Charge, which obviously isn't in any of these rotations, because Special Charge with DCE would have been busted. So,
but he does have Counter Energy, which kind of means he gets to play a 4 of, because
yes.
The general concept of spread decks is that you never take prizes until later in the game. You take all your prizes at once. So as soon as your opponent takes 1 prize card, counter Angie effectively becomes just a busted double colorless Angie. It also counts as double rainbow technically, but for the purposes of this list, it's mostly just used as an extra double colorless Angie.
For sure. So, picked up a couple of good supporters as well. Tate and Liza is a fantastic supporter for both effects, like either shuffling in, drawing 5, or having a switch card, because obviously only one person can draft switch. So that's really solid. And Steven's Resolve for this kind of deck is incredibly strong as well. If you don't have any kind of hand disruption, then Steven's Resolve kind of just gives Adrian everything he needs in hand to just go off next turn. And Hapu also is incredibly strong.
I would actually argue that Steven's Resolve is like one of the best supporters for this format in general, because like I'd say in general like decks are not setting up very fast, so giving up a turn of attacking isn't that big a deal when you're probably going to be struggling using the first couple of turns to stuff anyway. So Steven's Resolve, definitely a really strong card in this format. Hapu's a little more risky because, as we were just saying, like recovery cards are a bit scarce in this format. There's not that many options to get stuff back, so Hapu discarding 4 of the top 6 cards, definitely a little bit risky, but we do actually see the very next card, he took the Guillotine Distortion Door, does have a bit of synergy with cards like Hapu.
Yes, absolutely. Bringing those things back. And like spreading more damage as well through that. I'm trying to see if there's anything else that he drafted that would have any kind of synergy with the discard of Hapu. Doesn't really look like it. He didn't really grab any significant recovery cards.
Well, I mean, it depends on if you include his Knight pick there. Is the Malamar with Psychic Recharge at the time. I imagine he was probably planning on building a bit of a hybrid Malamar deck with Sky Psychic Energy, discarding Guillotiner, etc. But spoiler alert.
Unfortunately, as you guys scroll down, Adrian, not only did he draft Malamar, he drafted a Pidgeotto, and then proceeded not to draft a Pidgey or a Inkay. So he got neither of those engines. So a bit of an oopsie on his part. He also drafted Green's Exploration, when I think almost every single Pokemon that he has an ability.
Yeah, I think Greens is like, obviously searching for any 2 trains has a really strong effect in this format, but I don't know if there's ever like a successful archetype you could build that doesn't rely on some form of ability. Because like, just in general, abilities are really strong when you don't have access to all these busted supporters and item cards and stuff. Like, you really need these supporting Pokemon with good attacks and good abilities to try and help set up your decking. Green's Exploration just doesn't have that much synergy with it, so a couple dud picks unfortunately for Adrian, but
he also had some other
able to kind of bring it back with a lot of his other picks.
Oh god, yeah, like he has some really good tool cards like Spell Tag and Lucky Egg, as well as the Adventure Bag to search for them. He was incredibly strong. He got access to Recycle Energy, so he has 3 special energies. And another really good pick that I think he made is the Alolan Sand/GX. Now, we never really got to test with this thing in our standard format, but I can imagine in this kind of format it can be incredibly devastating, with that GX attack doing 100 damage to everything that has a damage counter on it. So has the potential to just completely wipe an opponent's bench out.
Yeah, I actually didn't know this card existed until as we were going through a lot of the sets in the early game. Before we started drafting, you were like, "Oh, remember this Sand Slash that I suggested in Malamar once?" I'm like, "No, of course I don't." And yeah,
it's busted.
It's a pretty underrated GX attack. I did not know that existed. And unlike the others, he actually remembered to draft along the Sandshrew in the very next pick. So he does
thank God he did. Also, a really good thing that he has access to is he drafted the Coughing and Wheezing. See, he already had the Detention Gas, but then he grabbed the Coughing and Wheezing from Cosmic Eclipse to combo with the Roxy. So he has that as another avenue for spreading damage counters, as well as having the Persimmon engine to combine and use. I think, is it called Team Play? I think it's called Team Play.
Yes. Does, I think, 10 plus 30 for each Persimmon on your bench, and then the other Persimmon says that your active Persimmon's attacks do 30 more damage to evolution Pokemon.
So he can stack some big damage, and then he also has Diancie Prism and Martial Arts Dojo to increase that damage. So pretty solid. I also think like the most underrated card that he drafted, in my opinion, from like doing a couple of test games against him, is Rotom Bike. I think like
actually crazy.
So like turn 1 Rotom Bike is incredibly good. Being able to just draw 6 and end your turn, it's fine at that stage, because like you want to Rotom Bike turn 1, and then if you can Steven's Resolve turn 2, by then you should be able to just go like Roxy spamming for the next couple of turns and get your knockouts. So yeah, and also Grimsley is very good for his deck.
Yeah, there's a few interesting cards he picked that like you wouldn't think are very good, but obviously worth helping him, such as the Grimsley. He's obviously got the Gladian as well, just in case he's prized one of his Persimmons or something else that's important. And also, I actually just really like the Professor Dewey as well, just giving that tiny little extra draw, and the extra damage can really come up a lot. He's obviously also got, I believe he's got one of the Tapu Leles, right? The damage swap one.
He has, yeah, the Psychic damage swap one. So, a bit tricky, though, that he grabbed the Psychic Lele, which means that he relies, I think, on the counter energy to be able to get off that attack. So, Adrian's expecting to go behind on prizes. That could be detrimental to him, though, if he's relying on that to get Lele's attack off. You know, some decks have the ability to take more than one prize in a turn, so he has to be really careful about the timing of everything, I suppose, in that aspect. But I honestly think it's a really strong list. The only downside maybe is, like you said, cards like Hapu, where if he loses those cards, he doesn't really have an effective way to actually get them back. Same as the energies, like if he loses a lot of them early game, or like he uses the DCEs but the Weezings get knocked out pretty quick, then he's heavily reliant on the counter energies, since he wasn't able to get that Inkay to use Malamar. So
I would say, though, that this is a format where you can probably afford to get a few, like, slow 2 attachment attacks off, where you're just like, okay, I'll just have basic energy and pass. I feel like this is a deck that would probably play basic psychic energy. I don't know what other energy he would play, like maybe fighting, but I would say psychic's probably going to be his basic energy of choice. So.
I think he'd run maybe a couple of fighting just to coincide with Dojo, because when he's behind on prizes, Dojo increases the damage. But, you know, I do agree. I forget that Persimmion's attacks primarily are just double colorless. I just know there is that single attack that it can do. That single is 30 for 1 energy. But like you were saying, though, he does have the advantage of taking those turns, because he did also draft Lily's Pokédoll. So with limited Gust access to every team in the format, he's able to put the Pokédolls up, and that buys him at least 1 to 2 turns, depending on if he can get back-to-back dolls down, which is really strong. And with Steven's Resolve, he can almost guarantee those dolls are sitting in hand. So, I don't know, I think it's a really cool deck. I think it's a good way to start off our little draft analysis here. And
that's actually a pretty good segue into the next person's draft, which is Aaron Vanderkolk, saying that not too many people are going to have gusting options. That is because Aaron took most of them, and we actually see his very first pick was Guzma,
the Guzma,
which is a pretty insane card.
Probably, like, I think you were saying to me, it is the best Gust that... probably the best Gust in recent history that has been printed. Like, Gust of Wind is probably still the most busted of them all, because it was on an item card.
Can't compete with guaranteed item Gust on, like, with no drawbacks, or original Pokemon catcher. But in terms of, like, balanced Gust, it's the best one. And I believe when I was talking to Brent, he actually said that Guzma was the one card that they were considering banning that wasn't, like, attacked in GX.
Yeah, it's nuts.
And it's not actually worth banning in hindsight. Like, I don't think it's that big of an advantage to have Guzma, but it's definitely one of, like, the top 5 at least best cards you can pick.
For sure. And then obviously his second pick, Dedenne GX, only running 1 copy, but is still an incredibly strong card. Being able to get you know, discarding your hand, drawing a fresh hand of 6, really solid. I don't know how well it fits in with his list. Like, I mean, he could be losing a lot of really good attackers with that. However, I mean, maybe it could pay off.
I think it's pretty good. He's also got the Cherishable, he's got the Electromagnetic Radar at the 8th pick, so he's got pretty decent search for Dedenne as well. I'm actually honestly kind of surprised that he got to pick Dedenne, because we did a snake draft format, so the first pick was left to right, and then the second pick was right to left, so Dedenne was actually like the 15th card pick, which I would have guessed it would have gone earlier than that, but Aaron was able to snag it at pick 15. And
I mean, to be fair...
Yeah.
I was gonna say, to be fair, I got Lele with pick 14, so let's
that's true as well.
Let's not get into that.
I'm sure he would have taken Lele instead if that was available.
I think in terms of his supporters, he's picked some really solid ones. Like, Bill's analysis is very strong in this format. Fan Club, like you mentioned before, is crazy good. Guzma Hala is fantastic. Unfortunately, he did miss out on getting the Thunder Mountain. That was, I think, sniped from him by Sobi. That would have been perfect for Guzma Hala targeting. But he did get the Chaotic Swell, which is incredibly strong in a lot of really key matchups against some lists. Like, for instance, Adrian's, where Adrian then can't get down the Dojo so freely for Persimmon to get a free knockout. So that can be really strong. I think the other... He actually drafted a lot of supporters. He grabbed Volkner, Olivia, and Plumeria as well. And Mars.
Yeah, those are all definitely
Great.
solid options. He's got a lot of just like generically good attackers. Like obviously Lightning has always just had really strong Lightning attackers on their own, and this is effectively as close as you get to playing Pikachu Zekrom tag team without actually playing Pikachu Zekrom. So it could be a little rough for NG Acceleration. But I do believe, did he get the Tapu Koko Prism?
He did. He got it with his 9th pick. So
there it is.
what is oh, this is going to be a bit weird. What does TAE stand for pick 6? Do you remember?
I believe that is triple acceleration energy.
Okay,
so
cool. Yeah.
So that he can actually power up the Silvally GX in one turn. And I believe he has both of the Silvally GXs.
Yes, he has the Brave Buddies disc reload, and he also does have access to the Gyro Unit Turbo Drive one, which is pretty insane. He also has the Zero Aura GX, which means anything with the Lightning Energy will have free retreat. And also Zero Aura GX's GX attack is an incredibly good way of getting those energies back, because I believe it's like 5 from the discard that come back into play.
Really, it's not as good as Full Blitz because it doesn't do damage, but it's probably the next closest thing that you have access to. And your GX attack isn't super important in this deck, because obviously you don't have access to Tag Bolt or what's it called, Lightning Ride GX from Raichu. You can just use your GX attack to set up. I'd say the best GX attack for damage that you could go for is probably actually that Silvally GX we were just mentioning. You can go the triple acceleration energy, and then it does 50 for 3 colors energy, does 50 damage for each of your opponent's benched Pokemon. So that can probably take a one-hit KO on pretty much anything throughout most of the game. But yeah, besides using that Silvally, I'd say your best options for GX attacks is going to be either that Zero Aura GX or maybe the Drampa GX if you get that early enough to draw 10 cards.
I could even see Aaron in some situations, due to the lack of switch cards in the game, going for a Tingly Return GX with a Dene. Could be a really solid strategy, and then it gets the Dene back to hand if he needs to dig. Because the big thing that Aaron also got was he didn't just pick up Guzma in terms of Gust. He also got Custom Catcher as well as Great Catcher. So Aaron kind of
Counter Catcher as well?
No, he didn't. Well, did he get Counter Catcher as well?
I think he might have. I'm not sure. Let me check.
Don't see it here.
Oh no, sorry. Wait.
I believe somebody else got Counter Catcher. I don't think Aaron got it.
Yes, it was.
The three Gus was enough for Aaron, but it's still a very.
Braden's the one he got.
Okay, well, it's still very smart from Aaron, because he understood that if nobody else has Gust, then he can kind of safely start setting things up on the bench and not worry about them being knocked out. He can kind of put up a one prizer as a sacrificial lamb of sorts, and then go from there, which is really smart from him.
Speaking of single prizes, he actually drafted both of the Raikus, which is really interesting combo. The Raikou from Signing Legends is especially good in my opinion. It just does, I can't remember, it's 20 or 30 damage for one lightning. It's either one of those two, and you accelerate an energy from your discard to one of your bench Pokemon, a lightning energy specifically. So that obviously is like energy acceleration for lightning when you don't have Thunder Mountain seems really important. And actually choosing to go with the Lost Thunder Raikou as well, which is a very interesting card, which I believe does like 120 damage for 2 energy if there are at least 2 lightning energy in the Lost Zone. So he's trying to pair it up with the Lost Blender. I'm not sure if that's a combination that Aaron's actually going to choose to go in his deck, but if he does pull off that combo, that is a lot of damage for 2 energy on a non-GX.
Yeah, makes it very, very scary for sure. He's also got some pretty cool GX options. I do remember that Jolteon GX was a very strong Pokemon back in the day, and Xurkitree itself is also no slouch. So decent options here for Aaron to access, and also the Jolteon pairing really nicely with the Eevee GX that he picked up too, with the Ascension DNA ability, which it's not my favorite Eevee. My favorite one is the Sun and Moon one, which allows you to evolve when you attach an energy. But Eevee GX's ability does allow you to evolve into any Pokemon that Eevee can evolve to, because obviously GX Pokemon usually can't evolve, whereas Eevee GX does have that ability which allows it to. I'm trying to remember, Aaron did have a reason for why he chose the Eevee GX instead of the regular Eevee. I can't remember what he said that was, but it should be fine, because I doubt he'd play more than one anyway. Yeah, I'm sure there was some logic behind it. Some interesting picks as well further down that we go. We see the Electrode from Team Up. We see Shining Arceus, and he also, intelligently, I guess, knowing that, Sobi, for instance, has some Ultra Beasts, and Adrian has the Persimmons, he picked up a late Weakness Guide energy, which can be incredibly impactful in those
Yeah, that's
matchups for
pretty spicy.
sure.
And we also see a little further down, he's gone with a couple specific memories for that type null, because obviously when you get towards the end of this draft, you actually have the advantage of being able to pick which types you're expecting to see play. Like, you can say, okay, I'm going to pick Fighting Memory to try and beat a Dark deck or another Lightning deck, because there is another Dark deck and another Lightning deck in this draft, or a somewhat Lightning deck, I should say. And then he's gone with like the Water Memory, expecting to try and beat the Fire build that Mitch has gone with at the end, which we'll talk about later. And I think he might have taken one other memory as well. I can't remember, but those are the only two I see right now.
Yeah, I don't think he took any other memories, because I think all of his other weaknesses were kind of covered. I think it just gives him a good matchup against everything. Like, for instance, against you, a lot of your Pokemon are already like Lightning weak, so he didn't really need to adapt to that too much. A couple of other interesting picks kind of a little bit further down. He has the Rayquaza GX right down the bottom from Celestial Storm, I believe, to be able to use Tempest potentially in a bind. He could have access to that. Also, just Dragon Break. I think it's called Dragon Break.
Yeah, does 30 damage for each energy you have in play, so he does have quite a few energy acceleration.
It could be a nice combo maybe with the Zeraora GX if it does go for that one. The other interesting thing I guess he has in combination with the Zeraora GX could be the Max Potion. So using the Max Potion, removing all the energy off of a Pokemon, then attaching one energy to Zeraora, and then using a Koko Prism Star to potentially get up to 7 energy back into play in one go can be incredibly potent. So
yeah, that could definitely swing a game, and I could be really scared because there's not that many things that can consistently take one-hit KOs on like 200 HP Pokemon in this format, so that could definitely swing games pretty easily. Pretty much that covers most of the things. The only other thing that's worth noting is he has gone with a spicy Alolan Persian from Lost Wonderline near the end there, which I believe it's got an attack that does like for 0 energy, I think it does 90 damage minus 30 for each energy attached to any Pokemon or something. So you can just try and use as many Gust cards to gust up a Pokemon on the bench that doesn't have any energy on it, and then swing.
Just try and swing, yeah. That could be really good.
And especially since there's a couple Pokemon such as like Dawnwing's Necrozma or Oricorio GX, which are typically Dark Weak bench sitters that don't have energy on them. You can kind of just gust them out and take a one-hit KO for 0 energy, which is pretty insane.
Absolutely. I think he's got a pretty solid draft. The only fear, again, like I guess I came up with Adrian's, is that it seems like his only real form of energy recovery comes from either the Zeraora's GX attack or the Tapu Koko Prism Star. And the Raikou, sorry. So he has like some ways to get his energies back there. I guess the difference is, unlike Pikarom, he doesn't get that massive acceleration turn that you can get from a full Blitz. He can get one Raikou set up to do some attacks and maybe charge something up on the bench. But then once that Raikou goes down, that one thing that's on the bench, that's it for Aaron. That's his attacker. He's got to go with it and then hope that he can charge up something else in the meantime and just see if it can stick. I mean, he does have the Persian to try and gust around some things while he charges up other attackers. But whether that'll last, we'll just have to wait and see, I suppose. But a very, very solid draft.
He's got the Persian and also the Raikou, which accelerates for one. He's got the Zeraora GX, so he has enough options that it seems like it'll be manageable at some point.
For sure. I definitely am scared of this draft. It looks incredibly strong.
Yes, I agree.
Now onto a draft that doesn't look as incredibly strong. It's my draft. Hooray.
What do you mean you got Ultra Ball? That card is actually insane.
Well, yeah, when Jordan was taking me through like the base set stuff, he kind of showed me Ultra Ball and Tapu Lele and said, you see these cards? These cards are busted. You should get them. And I was like, okay.
Did you actually never play this game of Ultra Ball? That just seems so weird to me.
Yeah, dude. I started... literally the first format that I went into when I started playing Pokemon was Unified Minds.
Because I'll just give you a quick little history lesson here, Sam. Ultra Ball came out in basically my first year of playing Pokemon in like 2012 approximately. And it stayed legal until 2019. Like, it got rotated at Worlds the year before you started playing. So it was legal for my entire career of playing Pokemon. Only just now are we playing about Ultra Ball for the first time. So that sounds so crazy to me that there are people who have not used this card before.
Hey man, I mean, look, from what I've seen of it and what I've heard of it, I had to draft this thing first. It just seems ridiculously good. I'm running a deck that doesn't mind discarding certain resources that can actually be more of an advantage to me. And with certain cards that I've drafted as well, I want absolute certainty of search. It can just be incredibly strong, especially like with, say, the second pick that I've taken, Tapu Lele GX, which, as we were mentioning, when it's put on the bench, I get to search for any supporter, add it to my hand. Just incredible synergy with some of the supporters I chose for this style of deck that I went with. I've kind of committed to an Ultra Beast Dark Box list.
Yeah, I actually really love all three of your first picks. Like Ultra Ball, Tapu Lele GX, and Cherish Ball all have insane synergy together, and I'm kind of shocked that the same person got access to all three of these cards just because of how insane they are, especially together. And your fourth pick is the Oranguru with his Struck, so you're kind of just wanting to ensure that with that card in play, you should always have access to draw. So lots of draw and search cards early, which I think is a really good strategy for this draft, just taking the strongest consistency cards early and then figuring out what you want to play a little later.
Yeah, for sure. I was, when Jordan and I were discussing decks, I said to him, I really like the look of Dark Box in this format because I think the hindrance to Dark Box in the standard meta were tag team cards. I felt that the tag teams were just too fast, too strong, and the Dark Box could just never keep up. Whereas in this format, there's no tag teams to be seen, and Dark Box still has, Weavile. You can then use Zoroark again. There are so many different attackers that you have access to that are actually kind of busted in this format. I just wanted to give it a try and just see if this could be the time when Dark Box is actually good.
I think it is. I mean, obviously it's a bit of a double-edged sword because, yes, other decks can't use tag teams, so it doesn't get outsped, but a lot of the best attackers in Dark Box and Standard were tag teams as well, so it means you have to be a little bit more creative, but we see a couple of your early picks. You obviously have the Zoroark GX and the Weavile GX, which pair pretty nicely, especially when you can actually use Zoroark GX attack Trickster, which saw almost no play in the actual Standard format, but in this deck I think it's a pretty good GX attack, and you also have a couple other GXs a bit lower down. The Darkrai GX and the Hoopla GX, are both really strong in this as well.
Yeah, I noticed the Darkrai from watching a lot of Expanded and seeing just how strong Restoration is. So that was definitely something I had my radar on. Like Restoration with Shadow Connection seemed great because even if I lost an energy, I'd be able to get that one back, and then I could Shadow Connect it back to the active, and it would never be too much of an issue. Also, the GX attack seemed really nice. If I had a way of inflicting a status and then being able to just Oko anything I wanted, seemed fantastic. I maybe didn't need to take Field Blower as high as I did, but I just knew that it was a really strong card and there were a lot of busted tools in the game, so I wanted to go for that, especially later on when I drafted Stealthy Hood. That was kind of the 1-2 punch that I wanted, was getting Stealthy Hood and then ensuring there was no way that people could get rid of my Stealthy Hoods, because I started to see Adrian's getting Detention Gas. I think somebody else took the Mimikyu with Shadowbox. And I knew that I saw Mitch was drafting Fire. So I was like, if he's going to draft Ninetales, I want to get Stealthy Hood and be able to stop that. But yeah, Field Blower being able to get rid of stadiums and tools is kind of nuts, man.
And that's one of the things I think that's really cool about this draft format is you're not only picking cards that you want to use, but you're picking cards to stop other people from using. Because obviously once you pick the card, nobody else has access to that card. So I really love the combination of picking Field Blower and then taking tool cards that nobody else can do anything about. And I kind of would have loved to have seen you take that to the next level and taking quite a few more really powerful tools that couldn't be discarded. I think the main one, as we were saying earlier, would have been the Wishful Baton would have been really strong for your deck, but there's a lot of really busted tools that you can take, and Field Blower, just having it in your arsenal means that other people are going to have to play a crappy card like Farva to even have a chance of dealing with it.
Yeah, exactly. I think only, and again, the thing is that only one person has Farva. I believe it is...
I don't even know if it got taken.
Oh. Wow.
Did it? Let me check. It did get taken by Braden.
Yeah, Braden took it, so there you go. Happy days.
Yeah, in 6 out of 7 games, your tools cannot be removed.
So another cool combo, I guess, that I got was not only the Lele and the Oranguru, but I also got the Let Loose Marshadow. Now, I'd heard this is an absolute sack card. I heard that it's pretty stupid that you can just go turn 1 Ultra Ball into Let Loose, and then your opponent starts with a 5-card hand instead of 7.
Yep, it's pretty insane.
So that seemed very appealing to me. Acerola, maybe... Okay, so I got confused between Acerola and AZ. I'm not going to lie, when I drafted this card, I didn't realize that it needed damage to be put on it, but I guess there are some situations where it can be good. Like if something is chipped and I can just bring it back to the hand, like I can use Shadow Connection to get all the energy off of that Pokemon, and then Acerola it back to the hand, potentially bench it again, and then Shadow Connection the energy all back onto it. Can be kind of broken, so that was the appeal. And then probably the best engine that I realized with Dark Box, because I guess the advantage I had of this was I heard that Brent had kind of been drafting Dark Box as well in the draft you guys had done, and
Yeah, the practice.
the one thing I saw that he didn't really have was energy recovery that could abuse Weavile GX, and so I knew that I had to jump on Naganadel from Lust Thunder, because that card plus Weavile has always been like the cornerstone of Dark Box in the standard meta, but in this meta is just kind of insane.
Yeah, it is. And also, I just want to throw this out there really quickly. Acerola is like 100% better card than AZ in
reckon?
almost every way. Because AZ actually discards all of the cards attached, whereas Acerola picks them all up. So if you AZ a Pokemon with Dark Energy on it, obviously it doesn't really matter for Weavile, but in general, Acerola, even though you have to have damage, it's still like an insane card, so don't be too upset about having to take that. But yeah, I do think that the Nagano package is really, really strong, obviously, with this deck, especially since you've already proven that you've got really good Pokemon search. That's why I really like taking the Mars Shadow when you've already got Ultra Ball, because obviously Ultra Ball just allows you to play these one-off support Pokemon and get a lot of more value. And taking the Nagano package also allows you to take both of the Nagano GXs, which both actually really strong in this format, especially the Unit 5 Mines Nagano, because not only is Venom Shot like a really good attack in this format, being able to like snipe something when you don't have many gust options is really, really powerful. But also, I just really like it for the ability. We're already stated that there's not that many options for draw, and you've got quite a lot of Ultra Beaks to actually take advantage of that ability.
For sure, yeah. I was a bit iffy on whether I wanted Stinger as well. I just saw with Adrian's list, I sat there and thought maybe there's a way that I could use Stinger plus the Cosmic Eclipse Blacephalon to take advantage of that situation. But then I also saw that Beast Raid is an incredibly strong attack in some situations, like especially against those decks that like draft the fighting type. So any energy on Naga, and then say if I have like 3 Ultra Beasts in play, that's 120 damage. So that's one-shotting Persimmons, which is great. And having say like a 3 in play plus then attaching the Choice Band, that's 180 damage, which is is that one-shotting? No, I think it's just missing one-shotting of Buzzwole GX. I think Buzzwole GX is 190, but
correct.
Regardless, I was pretty happy that there were a few picks that obviously probably weren't that great. Because VDK took all the Gust, I took Fione, but then realized that Fione isn't really that needed in this format. My deck is incredibly strong once it gets set up, so I don't really need to gust anything out. I just wanted to go as consistent as possible. That's why I really liked my...
The Fione's still pretty good. It's not required, obviously, but I like it. But you were just saying that the Gano GX could be a little shy of damage, but you actually also took the Choice Band, which I forgot to mention before. Is probably, in my opinion, it might be the single best tool card in the entire Sun and Moon block. So having that and Filbor is just a really good combo.
It is. Unfortunately, not a lot of decks in this draft are running GX Pokemon, so it might not be as strong as I wanted it to be, but I think it could still have some niche situations for sure. It also, if it doesn't come up in a matchup, then it's just discard fodder for something like trade with Zoroark, so it doesn't bother me at all.
Yeah, trade, Ultra Ball, there's lots of ways for you to discard cards you don't need.
I was really happy also, like, with, I think it was rounds 18, 19, 20, like, those 3 picks were really important to this draft, so the 2 supporters in Oak Setup and Red and Blue were the 2 main supporter cards I wanted to go with for this Naganadel Weavile engine, because Oak Setup can effectively get me Sneasel, Zorua, and Poipole if I use the Water Sneasel, and then I can use Red and Blue next turn to evolve the Sneasel into a Weavile and attach 2 energies immediately. So by turn 2 I can have 4 energy on board, which means I could use something like the Cosmic Eclipse Guzzlord to immediately do 120, and if I get a knockout that's automatically 2 prizes on the board. So it can get kind of crazy pretty quick. And then Altar of the Moon, Jordan kind of alerted me to this combo that you can use Altar of the Moon plus Dawnwing's Necrozma GX to always have a free retreat, which is kind of nuts. Well, I mean, Altar of the Moon requires the Necrozma to have an energy, but all you have to do is use Shadow Connection, put one energy on the Ultra Necrozma, and then it can just keep on being something that comes in and allows free retreat, which is kind of nice. I do like that a lot.
Yeah, Ultra of the Moon is certainly a pretty insane stadium card. I certainly like it more than the Dark City, which we have in the current standard rotation. Mostly because Ultra of the Moon isn't limited to just basic Pokemon, and obviously it works for both Psychic and Dark Pokemon rather than just Dark. So lots of good synergy there with the Dawnwings Necrozma. There's also a few cards that you drafted later on, which I think are really, really strong. Mostly that Noivern GX and Noibat that you stole in the last couple of rounds. We were already saying that you've got the Venom Shot again. Also, you're probably going to want to be playing Psychic Energy already anyway, and that Noivern GX, this has a lot of really strong attacks.
Yeah, Distort is just really good. Like 2 energy, and all it requires is a dark and a colorless, and then I can just prevent any item cards from being played next turn. So against a deck like Adrian's or maybe Brayden's, could potentially pick up a knockout and then prevent them from putting down like a Dole or something else on the next turn. And even the second attack is really good. It does something like Sonic Volume, I think it was like 120, yep. And it prevents special energies from being played, correct, which is insanely good in some matchups. It prevents DCE, it prevents any like unit energies, Rainbow, Aurora, so that was another really good. I was just glad I got that at the end. It kind of, I was looking through all the GXs and then saw that Noivern could just be run off the Psychic and Dark Energy engine, and I was like, why not? Like, why not run
also,
this card?
I don't know how much attention you paid to his GX attack, but his GX attack is also like really, really insane. It's literally just Sky Scorching Light from Ultra Necrozma. You do 10 less damage to each Pokemon, but there's no cap on it. You can do it at any point during the game. It's
yeah,
really
it does seem really, I was trying to combo that with the Blacephalon from Cosmic Eclipse, but I was realizing that they both required a Psychic Energy, and it was really hard with no like energy switch or anything in the deck to consistently get both of them off in a game. So
yeah, Weeball doesn't move Psychic Energy, unfortunately.
Yes, that would have been
like Rainbow Energy or something like that to try and make that work.
I could have. Yeah, I think Rainbow Energy had been taken at that stage, though. Unfortunately,
maybe Aurora was around. I don't know.
I think both of them got taken pretty early on.
Makes
but
sense.
It is what it is. The only other card I'll mention that I'm really glad that I was able to pick up is Alana's Fishing Rod. Honestly, that card going at pick 29 was like a godsend for me. Being able to have access to getting back the Choice Bands and Stealthy Hoods, as well as getting back certain Pokemon. So I could be a bit more aggressive with my cards such as like Guzzlord GX's Eat Sloppily. I could discard like a Weavile, but know that I could Fishing Rod it back into my deck. I could use the Unified Minds and Ganadel with the Ultra Conversion to discard like a strong Ultra Beast that I could still get back with the Rod if I needed to. So definitely gave me a lot more aggressive play. But overall, like, you know, I didn't really know half the time what I was doing with the draft, and I definitely had tunnel vision in those middle parts and missed some really key cards that I could have drafted. But I'm pretty happy with how it finished up. I think.
Well, I think that's true for everyone. I don't think there's a single person who, after we're all done, didn't realize, oh, I should have taken that card. That would have been so good. But that's a part of the fun of the draft. We're not building perfect decks here. We're just trying to do the best that we can with what we ended up with.
For sure. Well, we're going to move on from my draft to yours immediately, Jordan. And the first pick is probably, you know, we were saying that Ultra Ball has been a crazy card for a long time, but this Professor's Research is going to be a crazy card for a long time now as well.
It is. I don't know how to feel about this being like the first pick. I think it's like the best supporter card in the game, in fact, or at least best draw supporter. So considering the best Pokemon Search card and the best energy had been taken already, I figured that going with the best supporter card was a pretty safe way to go. If you actually have a look at my picks, I didn't actually kind of decide what kind of a deck I wanted to go with until about the 10th round. My first 9 picks were actually kind of just consistency cards that were pretty flexible to be used for almost any deck. I went with the Alolan Vulpix from Guardians Rising, which has the Beacon attack, which I think is really, really strong. It's a zero energy attack that's just search your deck for any 2 Pokemon, put them into your hand. So that's always going to be good for the setup. And also the Dunsparce, which costs 1 color Sanji. is search your deck for 3 basic Pokemon, put them onto your bench, then you're allowed to switch one of them out. So obviously a lot of consistency for Pokemon search with the basics that I went with earlier, and the Alolan Vulpix ended up having a dual purpose because since I ended up going with a water build, I was able to also take the Water Alolan Ninetales GX later on, which ended up being a really strong attacker.
Oh yeah, that one is insane. Is that the Ice Blade one?
Yeah, it's got Ice Blade for 2 colors, does 50 snipe anywhere, or the big attack is, I forget what it's called actually, but it's Water colors for 160 and discard 2 energy, so
Damn.
it hits pretty hard and also has snipe.
For sure. And you've got like some incredibly good items. Honestly, probably I would say though, what you've done better than anybody else in this draft, from what I've seen, is you drafted the best supporters in my mind. Like Research, Lily, Ingo Emmett, Red's Challenge, and even Pokekid. Like those ones alone are incredibly good in this format. Pokekid, although it is just searching for one Pokemon, if all you need at that time is that one Pokemon, then it does not matter.
Yep, Frostmoth is a pretty important Pokemon for the build that I've gone with. I obviously, like, my entire energy acceleration is built around that Frostmoth. I do also have Aqua Patch, which I picked down at pick 25, which is not a bad option, but obviously Frostmoth is the one that I want to be focusing on. I also kind of didn't even stop there with supporters. I picked a whole bunch of supporters that were pretty strong later on as well. I went with the what's it called, the Underground Expedition towards the middle, which is actually a pretty weak card. I don't think I'll probably end up using it. It's just look at the top bottom 4 cards of your deck, take 2 of them, put them into your hand. So not a terrible option, but I think I had better options earlier on. I also took the TV Reporter as my very last pick, which is just a straight draw 3 cards and then discard 1 from hand. So I took a couple supporters that I probably didn't need to, but as you said, the ones that I picked in the early game are definitely the ones that I'm going to be focusing.
I think one interesting supporter that you picked that maybe could be a lot better than expected could be Misty Lorelei. I think even the second effect of Misty Lorelei in some situations, to be able to fire off a second GX attack in a game, can be incredibly potent. Obviously, it depends on the Pokemon using it, because like I doubt you're going to be able to get off double Zero Vanish with a Palkia, for example.
Hey, maybe.
Maybe, like, right, but even going for a Zero Vanish early game with Palkia, and then being able to go for, like, a Resolute Blade with Keldeo, can be incredibly strong in the late game.
And one thing I really like about it is one of my early picks actually was the Sword and Shield Chinchino with effectively his Zoroark GX's trade. You'd already taken the Zoroark GX, so I had to go with the Chinchino. But Chinchino is debatably a better support card than Zoroark in this format, just simply because you're allowed to play 2 copies of it instead of 1.
Yeah.
So Chinchino is going to allow me to build up big hands pretty quickly, and you kind of need to have a big hand to take advantage of that second effect from Misty and Lorelei. If we have a quick look at some of my attackers as well, we can go through what my GX options are. We've already spoken about the Alolan Ninetales GX, the water one. Its GX attack is actually really strong. It's 2 color Sanji, and you put all damage on this Pokemon on your opponent's active Pokemon. So when you got 210 HP, if you could use that GX attack twice in the game, then Alolan Ninetales is going to be surviving like an insane amount of time. There's not much that can one-hit KO as easily, especially since it's weak to Metal, and nobody drafted Metal in this draft. I also took the other Alolan Ninetales GX, but that's pretty much just going to be for the ability to search for item cards, so I don't need to talk about that. I doubt I'll be playing Fairy Energy. We already spoke about the Palkia GX and the Keldeo GX, but there's also the Lapras GX, which I took. And I think Lapras GX might be one of the stronger water attackers in this format, mostly because it's also a pretty good consistency card for 1 water energy if you open with it. It's got Collect to just draw 3 cards, which is above average for most attacks that do something like that.
Oh god, yeah.
And the Ice Blade GX is pretty strong as well. It does for 3 energy. I believe it's 100 damage, and it's guaranteed paralysis, so there's not heaps of switching effects in this format, so being able to paralyze up to 2 times a game could be really strong as well.
You got some really good like switching cards too. Obviously the Air Balloon as well as Switch Raft are both super solid. And then another really cool thing that you drafted late that I've only just realized is because you drafted the Ditto Prism Star at the start, you actually picked up what I believe would be the Wash Away Quagsire.
Yes, that's correct. I didn't go with the Wooper, just Quagsire, so it could just be a cheeky one-off that I play with the Ditto Prism, and that effectively means that I don't need switching cards. I can just use Frostmoth to chuck all my energy onto the bench, and then use the Quagsire to move them active. It also makes it easier, of course, to switch between attackers rather than having to find a whole nother 3 energy to bench an attacker and switch to it. I can just put that Quagsire into play one switching card, and then all of a sudden I've got a new attacker powered. So that's a pretty cool card that I've included as well. And I also actually managed to get the Warp Energy as kind of an extra switching card. So obviously when you're playing Frostmoth, switching is like a really important thing to be able to do. So I wanted to make sure I had at least 3 different cards that could do that. So between the Air Balloon, the Warp Energy, and of course the Switch Raft, there's a lot of options for me to pivot and make full use out of that Frostmoth.
For sure. Even like a card like Fisherman with Frostmoth is kind of nuts, right? Because that's is that 4 energy from the discard to hand?
Yep, 4 energy from the discard. So it's double energy retrieval, but on a supported deck.
Insane. Insane. Yeah, very, very strong. Like, as you can see, a lot of, I guess, the way you can look at these drafts is that you can tell that, not to give Adrian and I a bit of flack. Adrian and I are not maybe as experienced as Aaron and Jordan are at the TCG. And you can see that Adrian and I had kind of ideas, and we've kind of made it work. Whereas Jordan and Adrian's drafts are just like up and down, very, very solid. So, very impressive stuff.
I'd also say I'd probably have a bit of an advantage just because I've done the practice draft as well. And it's not a huge advantage because we didn't actually end up really doing much with it. We only just did it to see how it goes and played like 1 or 2 games. But it did give me a bit of an idea as to like what I need to make sure I take. So that definitely gives me a bit of an advantage. But hey, at least now we've all got that experience under our belt. So I'm sure we'll do this again eventually at some point, and we're all going to have a bit more experience of how it works now. Another card I just want to quickly touch on that I picked was I actually managed to get the Unbroken Bonds Mew. So obviously Adrian drafting Spread and a couple other people having some spreading attacks available to them. I think that Mew's a really cool card that only one person gets to take advantage of. I think there might have been one other card that has like a Venture Barrier.
Yeah, it's Sky Pillar.
I don't know, an ability. I think it's a Machoke that Braden might have taken.
Oh, yeah.
Which just does it on a stage 1, except it blocks damage and damage counter, so it's a better version, but obviously Mew having that Psy Power as well. A lot of my Pokemon do exactly 160 damage, both the Lapras GX and the Alolan Ninetales Water GX. Both do 160 damage for 3 energy, so Mew could also actually be pretty good just for sniping a Pokemon that I've damaged for 160 and finishing off on the bench.
Out of curiosity, is there anything about the list, like any cards that you wish you could have drafted upon reflecting?
That's a good question. I'm trying to think. I definitely think there was. Honestly, I'd say the one card that I wish I took was probably actually that Choice Band that you ended up with. I think I should have gone for that earlier. There was definitely a few cards I took that I could have waited a bit for, but...
yeah, you probably didn't need to take that Sightseer. You probably could have taken that Choice Band.
So yeah, that Choice Band would have buffed my Pokemon to do 160 damage up to 190, and considering most of the good GXs are going to be played are probably just going to be those basic GXs with 180 to 190 HP. The difference of that 30 damage is so insane for a lot of my attackers, so I'd say that's the one card that I wish I was able to get a hold of.
Fair enough. Alright, well, we're going to jump over now, I think, to Braden's draft here. Now, Braden, a lot of you guys won't know who Braden is, but to us, he is always probably one of the most creative team builders in the South Australian scene. He doesn't follow the norm of, like, whatever...
No, that's for sure.
Whatever team is training, he will find a really cool play style and he will stick with it, and we love him for it. We appreciate his creativity more than anything in these uncertain times, and this draft is kind of nuts, Jordan. Not gonna lie.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's Braden's certainly not the player that you see winning the tournaments too often, but it's really impressive how well he's able to compete with us playing these tier 1 meta decks every week. He's able to give us a run for our money with these unique rogue decks that he's built. So this draft format is actually like a really cool format for him to kind of show off his creative flair, and he's certainly proving it with his picks here. He's kind of actually tried recreating one of the rogue decks that he often plays at our local tournaments. He's got a bit of a lightning box, so competing with Aaron for some of those lightning cards, which is going to make it a little tougher for both of them to get everything they want. But there's a lot of good cards that Braden got, which Aaron wasn't able to get a hold of.
Yeah, for sure. I think the Nest Ball is a pretty good first round pick, though. Incredibly good ball search. Just getting any basic Pokemon onto the bench immediately. is incredibly good for Braden. For instance, it allows him to immediately get, say, like an Emolga onto his bench if you wanted to start doing the Nuzzly Gathering shenanigans, or he can guarantee things like Pachirisu on there for the Snuggly Generator, which are both just incredibly good search options. I'm trying to think if there's any other Pokemon that would be ideal to immediately place on the bench.
I mean, there's pretty much none that are bad to take. There's a whole bunch of stage 1 evolution lines that he took, so he's obviously got that Raichu line, which is really strong. He's got that Machoke that we were just mentioning for bench barrier. A lot of his Pokemon are low HP, so having protection on the bench is pretty important. He's also gone with Lantern line. I actually don't know what that Lantern from Celestial Storm does. Do you know that one?
I have a
Sam?
feeling it might be the one that mills. I could be wrong. So it
Right,
could be a disruption kind of Lantern potentially. I know
There's got
there
a
is
mystery
one. That is.
Lantern in there that's probably going to beat us all, and we have no idea what it does.
There's a lot of cool electric cards. One of them that, like, personally, it has like a soft spot in my heart is Electro GX. I just think it is amazing. Being able to go for what is it, the electromagnetic bomb or whatever it's called, the ability that allows you to take any energy from your discard and put them onto a Pokemon. I think it has to be onto a GX Pokemon though, so I'm sure he's going to try and power up that Tapu Koko GX.
I think it's specifically to anything but a GX Pokemon.
Ah, well then it would probably be, there's other great targets for that. For instance, he is a big fan of. I know he's down here somewhere. Where is that Raichu? It's got to be
somewhere.
It's got to be, dude. I see Raichu GX. Where's the actual? There it is. Raichu Celestial Cosmic Eclipse. So yeah, that Raichu is one of his bread and butter cards. Basically, I think for each Pokemon that has Nuzzle, it does 20 damage, which is kind of crazy.
No, wait, is that what it does? I thought it was 20 for each energy in play.
Oh, no, sorry, I'm thinking of a different attack. I think I'm thinking of Nuzzle Shot.
No, you might be thinking of the Pachirisu, which
yep.
accelerates an energy to every Pokemon in play that has Nuzzle. And
Yeah.
you're obviously taking a whole bunch of Pokemon with Nuzzle, so you can take advantage of that combination. And honestly, in this format, without Pokemon Bs and tag teams and stuff, I actually think that Raichu's going to be in a position where it can actually start taking one-hit KOs on a lot of our big GX Pokemon and big non-GX Pokemon. Like this thing is actually going to be a bit of a one-hit KO machine. I believe he also was able to take Electro Power, which is a card that he was able to snag away from Aaron.
He got pick 22. So
yeah, that's pretty solid.
Clearly, maybe Aaron just forgot the card existed, or just prioritized every other card over Electro Power.
To be fair, it's not super important when you can only play 2 copies of
That
it.
is fair.
Braden's kind of counteracted that flaw by in the 34th pick going with Electro Charger, so he's effectively could have access, if he's lucky, to 6 Electro Powers per game.
For sure.
Which is pretty insane.
Now, the ultimate cuck move that Braden has made is that, as you guys know, I'm running Ultra Beasts. And Braden, out of nowhere, in picks 13 and 14, took Beast Ring, and then took the only Beast Ring target in his entire deck, which is a Xurkitree.
I mean, it's pretty funny, but it's actually a pretty scary move as well. Like, just that one Xurkitree and 2 Beast Rings in his deck. I mean, if we were just raving about how good Electric Power is for giving you 30 extra damage, if he's using that Raichu to attack, the Beast Ring actually gives you 40 extra damage, so it's kind of a bigger Electric Power if you get it in the right situation.
See, the scary combo too, Jordan, that I just realized, is he can use the Electro GX to knock himself out, and then he automatically goes onto Beast Ring turn.
Oh, that's so insane. Braden.
Holy crap. He also has like some amazing supporters. Marnie, of course, is a fantastic supporter. Copycat is incredibly strong. Sophocles, I don't know too much about, but I know that Judge...
Good dude. Sophocles is discard, I think, 2 cards from your hand and draw 4. So it's good for getting those energy into the discard pile if you've got any way of getting them back. I don't think you got the Tapu Koko.
Aaron got that one. But, I mean, he got a lot of good disruption, because he also, as well as Marnie, he got Judge and he got Wiki. So,
yeah.
All of them are incredibly good disruption. He has the Escape Rope and the Rescue Stretcher as well, and Rosa, which I've seen him use Rosa before. He knows what to do with that card. It is incredibly strong.
Yeah, Rosa is definitely a very good card for this style of deck, and I actually really love the Rescue Stretcher. In my opinion, that is the best recovery card that we've ever had in the standard format. Ordinary Rod's giving it a bit of a run for its money now, just so it gets energy and Pokemon back, but the fact that Rescue Stretcher is not only a recovery card, also kind of like a search card because it can get you Pokemon to hand when you really need them. So I really love the fact that was taken so early, and I definitely think it's deserving of being taken that early. So it's really great to see, especially someone like Braden who's going quite a lot of different Stage 1 lines that he might need to recycle.
For sure. I'm just going down. I actually think he has probably one of the best stadium spreads as well. He has Sky Pillar, Power Plant, and Wondrous Labyrinth, all of which have seen competitive play in Standard and are incredibly strong in this meta. Sky Pillar obviously preventing any of that bench damage, so Adrian's deck can have a pretty tricky time doing that bench damage. And then also, I mean, to be fair, it is kind of good against your deck too, because it prevents, say, the extra effect of Sauna Blast from Volcanion Prism, as well as, I can't remember if there was another card that you had that did spread damage.
Mew, so...
Oh yeah, Soft Side Power, so yeah, potentially. Power Plant obviously is incredibly strong against maybe myself and Aaron, since we have a lot of the GX Pokemon with abilities, but that's why Aaron, I believe, drafted Swell just before Braden picked up Power Plant. He wasn't playing any games, but that is fair. That's why I've ran Lucamine, so I could also get back my stadiums, because if there is a Power Plant in play, I can't use Weavile, and that's pretty bad. So, very strong pickup there. And Wondrous Labyrinth is a card maybe that not a lot of people know about, but is incredibly strong in the metagame. Basically, if you don't have a Fairy Pokemon in the active, then the attacks of that Pokemon cost 1 energy more, which you wouldn't think would be that important, but in this format where energy acceleration is quite difficult, it actually is an incredibly strong card.
Yeah, it's actually a really funny pick for him, because obviously he hasn't taken really any Fairy type Pokemon, so he's basically going into this saying, my attacks only cost 1 energy, I'm happy to attach a 2nd energy, but your attacks will cost 2 or 3 energy. It's actually going to be quite a lot more difficult for you to take advantage of that. So I really like all of these stadiums.
You know what the funniest combo that I just saw he has with Labyrinth is too, Jordan?
Yeah?
He can use Wondrous Labyrinth plus Counter Gain, and just use the effective Counter Gain to cover the energy he needs for Wondrous Labyrinth.
That's so good. He also actually, I just noticed, has the Inner Portal.
Yes.
So that can also kind of screw over your opponent's attacks even more. You can just move an energy that they really need to attack onto the relevant Pokemon, and then also at the same time increase their attack cost by 1 colorless if they are out of stadiums. And considering Braden has up to 5 stadiums he has access to, I'd say it's pretty likely he's going to be able to eventually Stadium War and get one of these powerful stadiums to stay and play for the entire game.
For sure. I honestly, like, as much as some of these picks maybe seem far-fetched to the people viewing at home, these are cards that Braden is incredibly comfortable with, and they are being put into a format where his decks are infinitely more viable. So I, for one, am scared. I am a little bit worried, because I know that he can be incredibly strong. He also has some other cool cards like the Island Challenge Amulet to skew the prize trade. The Bodybuilding Dumbbells is also a fantastic addition. And he also has the Counter Catcher, which is one of the only other forms of Gust that was left available after Aaron kind of did a clean sweep of them. So that's another really solid. He's definitely designed his deck in a way to say, I know you're going to take a lot of prizes off of me, but I have ways to bounce back. I think maybe the one card that he missed that I was able to pick up, judging on the way that he's playing his list, could have been Reset Stamp, but I think with the fact that he has both Judge and Marnie, that I don't...
Wick.
And Wick. So yeah, I think he has all the disruption that he needs, but maybe it would have been nice to have a searchable disruption with a Rosa. So maybe.
I also just want to highlight one more card that I think is strong, and you probably don't know how good this card is to play back in the day, Sam, but Tapu Koko GX was known as like the probably the best lightning GX attacker in the game behind Pikachu. Like this was like the go-to lightning attacker for quite a long time, because it actually has Heatran GX's ability, or Articuno GX's ability, where it can, well, it's better than Heatran's, because when you bench it, it automatically switches itself into the active and sucks up as many lightning energy attached to your Pokemon as you like. And then I'd say it probably has by far the best GX attack that Braden's deck offers. Does 50 damage for each energy on your opponent's board. I know for me playing Frostmoth, that's a pretty scary thing.
Yeah, me playing Dark Box, I'm worried, dude. That's a lot of damage.
Yeah, so Tapu Koko GX, it can just come out of nowhere. He can just bench it. As long as he's got at least 2 energy on the board, it can swing for massive amount of damage, or it can just do a flat 130 damage, just like Heatran. So definitely a very powerful card there. And we've already mentioned that switching effects are pretty strong. Tapu Koko GX acts as that extra switch effect, as well as the escape rope he's got. definitely means that his deck is going to be able to switch in and out when he needs to most of the time.
Definitely looking forward to see what Braden can do, but we will move on to Sobi. Now, if you guys don't know, Sobi is obviously the senior who won the most recent international championship in Melbourne. So we're all very proud of Sobi and what he's done, but we are all trying to absolutely destroy him in this format. Because I think he becomes a master next year, doesn't he?
Well, we don't really know what's going on next year. Maybe they'll end up keeping all the seniors the same age division because of the double season that we got going here. So we'll have to wait and see. But he's certainly around about that age, and he's definitely got some pretty interesting picks. The thing I love the most is that both Braden and Aaron weren't able to pick up Thunder Mountain, and Sobi was able to get it.
Dude, Sobi sniped it. Like, they both chose Lightning decks, and were like, got to round 10 and said, nah, I don't need Thunder Mountain. So Sobi's just swept in and snatched that up. Sobi, it looks like, has essentially gone with a Zap Beast deck, as far as I can ascertain.
That's probably the thing I hate the most about Sobi's entire draft, is his second pick. Like, if we look at the first two rows for every single person, like, they've both picked everyone's picked pretty insane consistency cards, or just like some of the straight best cards in the entire game. But Sobi he got Quick Ball, which, hey, Quick Ball definitely won. Probably, I want to say it's either the second or third best Pokemon Search card that we have in the game, behind Ultra Ball, and it's about tied with Nest Ball. I'd even make an argument that it might be better than Nest Ball overall, just because it goes to hand and you get to discard a card. But Zapdos that early, like, you can probably wait early, 5 rounds to get it. I believe his logic was that he really didn't want Aaron to get access to Zapdos after seeing him take Guzma in the first round, and that's definitely respectable. Like, Zapdos would have been a very powerful card for Aaron to pick. I don't think he would have picked it round 2, but Sobi just wanted to make sure, and to be fair, he ended up with some pretty good cards later on anyway, so I don't think he got too disadvantaged by wasting his second pick.
Yeah, for sure. I think he has probably one of the more, like, consistent lines of play in a deck. Like, the only issue maybe that Sobi could encounter is it's a lot of Pokemon, right? It's a lot of different Pokemon, so it can be harder maybe for Sobi to find a streamlined option for his deck. Like, I think he would have appreciated a card like Oak's Setup that I picked up, where he was able to get multiple of the types that he needed sitting on his bench as early as possible. Like, the Quick Ball is really good, Great Ball is also very solid.
Yeah, respectable. And the Zeb Striker as well, I think, is one of the best support cards in this format. I would say it's like, in terms of support abilities, Chinchino/Zeb Striker, Chinchino/Zoroark, Zeb Striker, and Steel Valley are probably the 3 best Stage 1 consistency Pokemon to go with, and he swooped up the Zeb Striker really early. I think it was like one of the first ones to
I think it was round 5 you got it.
Yeah, so that's before Zoroark was taken, that's before Steel Valley was taken, I think. So he's definitely prioritizing that Zeb Striker as the best Stage 1 ability, and in a format where you can only play 2 ofs, Zeb Striker probably gets you the most cards for the 1 inclusion. Like, obviously Zoroark, when you've got 3 Zoroarks in play, is always going to be better than Zeb Striker. But when you've got 1 Zeb Striker, like, that puts in so much work in this format.
For sure. Like, and also another really good card that he drafted, I think, against a lot of these decks in this format is the Alolan Muck with the Power of Alchemy ability, being able to shut off the abilities. He actually made a really astute late pick in the draft, I believe it was. I just want to find where it was. Yeah, the Ultra Necrozma from Cosmic Eclipse, which obviously has the ability where it can only attack if you have 2 or less prize cards remaining, but thanks to the Muck, that ability doesn't matter. So then he could just use that Ultra Neck very early in the game. He drafted a lot of special energies. I believe he drafted both Aurora and Rainbow energies, as well as Beast energies. So that Ultra Necrozma can be pumping out 200 damage if it has that Beast energy attached.
2 energy for 200 damage on a non-GX.
And also, not to mention, Sobi drafted the Vitality Band, which means if you had Beast Energy and Vitality Band, he is one-shotting your Alola Ninetales GX, Jordan.
I think 210 HP might be the most any of our Pokemon have. I think maybe Guzzlord might have more. I forget how much Guzzlord has.
Potentially. I'm not 100% sure. I know Zoroark has 210. I'm not too sure about Guzzlord.
I legitimately think that 210 HP is the most HP out of every Pokemon that was taken. So
yeah,
And I would say that Ultra Necrozma might be, like, realistically the only Pokemon that was taken that can actually get up to those numbers without having to rely on something like, for example, Weavile could get to 300 if your opponent plays 5 abilities, but this just straight has the number 210 written on it if you get the Beast Energy and the Vitality banned. And it also has a busted effect, I believe, discards an energy from your opponent's active Pokemon. So if for some reason they actually survive the attack, which seems unlikely, then they're probably going to be having to waste another energy on the active, or maybe even just sacrificing that Pokemon to just get an attack off and deal with this Ultra Necrozma. So I think that might be like one of the better attackers that Sobi has to work with in this format.
The Muck does become a little bit counterintuitive in some matchups because he did also draft the team up Absol, which will lose its ability. I can't remember exactly what it's called, the ability, but it's basically just prevents a retreat cost by 1.
I think it was good as well, actually. That's what usually I know that one, but that's alright.
But yeah, so that's a little bit counterintuitive, but he was the one person to draft Switch, so he has easily the best Switch in the game. And he did also...
Well, I mean, Switch and Escape are about the same. They're
I guess so, yeah. And then he also did draft the Kartana and the Pheromosa that both have free retreat. So he always has a way of bringing something up to the active that can freely retreat because he took the one card that increases retreat cost. So maybe that was what he was thinking of doing, was taking the Pokemon with a retreat cost, not even using it, just making people fear it, and then chucking in all his free retreat Pokemon so he has easy switch outs.
But the Katana is definitely a really strong attacker as well.
Oh yeah, Big Cut is very strong.
120, I think it does, if you have 4 prize cards left.
Yeah, so if you've knocked out 2 Pokemon or they're taking 2 prizes, then I think it's like 120, or it's like plus 120, so it's like 10 plus 120.
Yeah, I think it's 10 plus 120, so 130, especially for me, I'm playing a lot of Pokemon in the week class. That's definitely a card that I'm personally scared of. Another couple cards that he has that could potentially get punished by that a lot of Muckies is playing that Mimikyu with Shadow Box, which would be especially good against you, for example, who's relying on that Weavile GX with the ability. Luckily for a lot of other people, their important abilities such as the Zeb Striker or in my case the Frostmoth are not GX Pokemon, so it does not block all of the abilities, but it's still a very strong card. I believe did Sobi get Shrine of Punishment?
He did get Shrine of Punishment. He got it pick 19.
Yeah, so that's a really strong combo, obviously, with that Mimikyu. That's a combo we see in the standard format. And another card that I think is really good is he's actually the last pick, which is the Shining Mew, is a really underrated card. That's a card that I think probably should have seen more play in standard than it ended up seeing. It didn't really see much play. But for 1 energy, it's accelerate any 2 energy from your deck to your Pokemon any way you like. So it's kind of like a mini Soul Burst GX, but on a basic Pokemon for 1 energy. So that's a really cool combo that he can actually use with those Ultra Necrozmas. He can put 1 energy on each of them, and all of a sudden he's threatening 170 damage almost every single turn once he's got that Alolan Muck in play.
Yeah, very scary. He also drafted another Pokemon that maybe could get hindered by the Muck, but I think it is just so strong as the Articuno GX, obviously with the Cold Crush GX against, decks like ours. If we've used a lot of our recovery and then we get Cold Crushed and we can't get all the energy back straight away, that can be pretty detrimental. I don't know how impactful it is against a lot of the decks in the meta, but even like the regular attack of Articuno is quite strong, so it might see play with Sobi. I'm not completely sold on it. I don't know how good it is, but he did also pick up some other excellent consistency cards. He picked up the Ultra Space to get some of the Ultra Beasts that he needs. He picked up the Ultra Prism Oranguru with the resource management, as well as picking up Friend Ball, which actually is really nice for the deck that he's playing because there's so many different types that he has, and he can take complete advantage of that against different opponents.
Yeah, and I actually find it really funny that he was able to pick up both the Howl and the Hop, so he's effectively the only player who's allowed to play a full playset of a card, technically, which is really funny. He's got a couple other really strong attackers. He's got the Shuckle GX, which is another one that could potentially be shot off by Muck, but Shuckle GX's ability is actually pretty insane. Its ability is that the defending Pokemon cannot damage it if it has 2 or less energy attached to it, so any attack that people are tending to use for cheap just isn't going to work. You're going to have to be using Pokemon that use 3 or more energy to attack, or at least you'd have to attach extra energy to Pokemon that don't need them in order to hit that Shuckle. So Shuckle definitely a really strong and underrated card, I would say, overall, considering it really is going to shut down a lot of these attackers, especially in the early game, and it does have a pretty strong attack for one. I believe it's one color Sanji. It does like poison to 40 between turns. That could
Yeah,
stack up
triple
really
poison.
quickly. Or it's 30, is it? That makes sense.
Yeah.
And he's also got the Buzzwole with Sledgehammer, which dominated the standard format for quite a while. It does 120 damage for just one energy when your opponent is on 4 prize cards. So that's definitely a really strong card that he's got access to as well.
Yeah, super scary card. We are going to move on, though, from Sobe's draft to Calvin's here. So Calvin was a senior last year, has now gone into Masters. And, you know, he's doing alright. He seems like a very good builder, and he's he went on a similar line almost to me in the Dark Box variety. However, I was able to pick up that Weavile GX, which he doesn't have access to, so he decided instead that he would go with the non-GX Weaviles, who are both actually quite scary.
Yeah, it's almost like Calvin's gone with a kind of similar deck to Adrian as well. He's got a lot of spreading options. He's got obviously the Burning Shadows Weavile with the Rule of Evil attack does, I think it's 60 damage to each Pokemon in play that has an ability. It does actually include both players, so he's going to have to be careful with when he uses it so he doesn't knock out his own Pokemon. But 60 spread for one color's energy to every Pokemon with ability is pretty insane. I'm kind of upset that he didn't end up getting the Shadow Box Mimikyu, because that would be a super good combo to pair those two together. He also got the other Weavile, which I think is my favorite one. Does 50 damage for one Dark Energy for each Pokemon your opponent has with an ability. We've already said many times like how insane all these Pokemon with abilities are for this entire video so far. So that card is often going to be able to get to like 200 damage, at least 150 I want to say for one energy, and that could be like a 2-2 line in his list. So definitely going to be one of his main attackers, I imagine. I actually just also really like Calvin's first 3 picks. It's gone really consistent with the Cynthia, Pokemon Communication, and the Elms. Oh, even the 4th pick with the Time Ball. So he's got a lot of good Pokemon search already just from his first 4 picks.
For sure, and then he also has the Pokegear a bit further down to try and get to the Cynthia and the Elms a bit faster. He also has Looker, which is a decent draw support. And he also drafted the Hooper, which is going to be a tricky thing for my deck, especially to get past. The Hooper that doesn't take damage from, I believe it's GX or EX Pokemon.
Yeah, it's got Safeguard. It's got the other Hooper as well behind, just below it. I don't know exactly which Hooper that is.
I believe it would be the Evil Admonition one.
Yeah, so basically just a basic version of his Weavile. Instead of doing 50 times the number of abilities your opponent has, does 20 more damage for each ability your opponent has. So he's really intelligently taking advantage of the fact that most people are going to be using abilities to set their decks up and to make their use of their strong Pokemon. He's got 2 different Sneasels as well that he picked pretty quickly after that, both the Sneaky Smash Sneasel and the 60 HP Sneasel. So I believe you got the Water one, but he got the other 2.
I was kind of fine with that though, just because I wanted the Water one for Oak setup anyway.
Yeah. And I also actually really like that he got the Honchkrow line from Guardian Driver, because that's a card that I personally think is really, really good, and we saw a little bit of niche play in the stand format back in the day, but for 2 colors energy, I believe it does, I'm trying to remember what the exact number is, but I believe it's 10 plus 10 for each damage counter on your opponent's board. So if you hit with that Weavile, for example, does 60 damage to each of your opponent's Pokemon, say they've got 3 abilities in play, you do 60 damage to all 3 of them, all of a sudden your Honchkrow is now doing like 190 damage base for 2 colors energy. So it seems like Calvin's got a lot of really, really powerful Stage 1 Pokemon that are going to attack for cheap and potentially take one-hit KOs on pretty much anything in the format.
Yeah, definitely scary for like you and I, given that a lot of our Pokemon are GXs that we're going to be trying to attack with. So could be a little bit scary. He also increases the consistency with things like Acrobike. Not to mention having like even Pokeball, like not the best card obviously, but Potential Search is nice.
Hey, it's better than nothing.
U-turn board for retreat seems really solid. He has the stadium nav so he can get to the he has Blizzard Town as well, which is really cool. Dark City and Black Market Prism Star, so very solid stadiums. Blizzard Town's an interesting one, so I guess maybe he wants to use that in conjunction with the Rule of Evil, maybe to put something in play that can't be knocked out, because that's the whole premise of Blizzard Town, right? If a Pokemon has 30 or less HP, it can't be knocked out.
It might be 40 or less, it's something like that, but yeah. It's also got quite a bit of synergy with the the Tapu Lele. He didn't get the Psychic one, but he did get the Fairy Magical Swap Tapu Lele. So that's going to allow him to rearrange the damage on his opponent's board. So potentially, instead of using that to take multiple knockouts, he could actually use it to kind of rearrange the damage on the board to put all of the opponent's attackers in range to have less than 40 HP remaining, and that could be really, really huge if you compare that with that Blizzard Town to kind of shut down an entire board. He's actually got quite a lot of really cool cards that he took in the mid to late game of the draft. Obviously, at the beginning, kind of focused on getting his strong supporting cards and his strong stage 1 attacks that he wanted to go with. But towards the mid to the end of the draft, he picked a lot of strong cards like Energy Switch and Multi Switch. He also got the Spiritombs. I believe the one that puts 10 damage between 10 is the one we got there. I'm not 100% sure about that.
No, the Shining Legends one is different.
Oh, it's different, is it?
Yeah.
Did you get both Spiritombs or just that one?
I think it was just that one.
Both.
Oh no, he did. Yeah, it's further up the
Yeah.
Anguish Cry.
You also got U-Turn Board, which is actually a pretty insane card. It does only reduce 1 retreat cost, so it's not quite as strong as Air Balloon, but the fact that it always goes back to hand means that he's not going to fall prey to your Field Ball, for example, and he's always going to have access to that card in play, which is really strong in a format like this. He's also got a few cool cards like Nanu, which could have a lot of synergy with his stage 1 attackers, where he could just Nanu to put a Sneasel into play out of nowhere, evolve a Sneasel into Weavile, and all of a sudden he's got a Weavile in play that most people probably wouldn't even have thought would be possible to do on the turn.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a really strong option for him. Honestly, it seems like a pretty consistent deck. I mean, the only fear maybe that he could see is that trying to see if he has any energy search. He has energy switches. He has also.
He does just have this straight card called energy.
Okay, he has energy search the card, so he has that. Yeah. But there's no other. Well, he has energy recycle system for energy recovery. So they're his two kind of outs. But I guess the plus out of Calvin's list is that it doesn't require a lot of big energy counts, like say mine would, to be able to get off attacks. So I think that's
any attack in his deck that requires more than 2 energy. I think that all just double attachments pretty much, which works really well for him. I guess the Hooper is the only one I think that costs. Calvin did not get any special energy. It looks like he got the unit, I think.
Yeah, he got the unit energy down the bottom.
So that's.
He did get the spicy rainbow brush as well. So I'm curious as to what. Maybe the rainbow brush means he could run a fairy energy in his deck and attach up onto the Lele and then use energy switch into rainbow brush to allow Lele to put in some work late game.
It's definitely a very specific card to take. So he must have had a strategy like that in mind when he was taking it. So I definitely like the looks of that. He's got a couple weird cards like Flabébé. I actually don't know what that Flabébé does. I do know that he's got what Repel and Stadium Nav do though. So Repel is actually an item version of Fion, so Calvin not getting access to any Gust, it doesn't look like he decided to just settle for the Repel, which is probably the next best thing. And Stadium Nav with the Blizzard Town can really help set up some of those cool combos we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, I honestly really like this list. I think that it again is just a different line of the Dark deck that I was trying to make, but I think it is really cool, and I'm honestly pretty scared to play against it. I think it has a pretty solid matchup against you and I, Jordan, just because we run so many big GX Pokemon, and a lot of Pokemon with abilities too, which his Weavile and even the Honchkrow can take advantage of.
Yeah, I think he's got a lot of power in this deck. My biggest concern with it for him, he does have quite a lot of consistency cards as well. I just worry that he's kind of lacking in like a big basic attacker that we can use. He's kind of relying on kind of chaining all of these stage 1 attackers together and just getting a lot of cheap stage 1s into play. I don't actually think... Did he take a single Pokemon GX card? I actually don't see one.
The one GX I kind of wish he would have taken is Honchkrow GX. I think that could have been really nice for his list.
Yeah, that would have been really good.
Ruler of the Night is really, really strong in conjunction with playing something like Dark City to prevent your opponent from doing a lot of stuff and giving Honchkrow, I think, free retreat. Yeah, I think it's Dark City that's free retreat.
Yeah, it's only for Dark basic Pokemon.
Okay, well then, it's not as good then, but regardless, like, being able to spread damage well with Featherstorm, I think it does 90 and then spreads 30 to another Pokemon, so that can set up some cheeky knockouts. Potentially another card you could have considered in this list maybe was the Yveltal GX with the Doom count.
Oh yeah, that could be interesting.
Could have
I don't know if he
potentially...
has a way to get 4 very easily.
Well, that's the thing. He would have to like chip with something, and then he could have maybe added a Galarian Zigzagoon into his list. That's definitely a card that I kind of wish I had in my list, because that extra 10 damage can be super important. But I guess bench space is quite tough. So I don't know. Maybe there were some GXs he could have used. Maybe he just didn't feel like he needed one, which is fair enough as well.
Yeah, it's definitely a very interesting strategy because he is, without a doubt, the only person who did not pick up a single Pokemon GX. Even other decks that were focused on non-GXs, such as Braden and Sobe, still played multiple different GXs, or at least have access to them. So it could be a bit of a blessing in disguise, knowing that no matter what list he ends up going with, we're going to have to take down 6 of these really powerful non-GX decks.
Well, I mean, you're going to have to take down 6.
Well, that's true, that's true.
I got Guzzlords out the wazoo, mate. I'm taking all those prizes.
Bust. Good.
Alright, we're going to get on to the
last
last, yes. Don't know who this Mitch guy is. Never heard of him before.
Well, he's taken Welder, so I think I know who he might be.
Oh, good. Yes, as you guys might know, this is Mitch, who obviously is the main runner of the Sableyes YouTube channel. Very nice guy. And yeah, he has drafted 2 very strong supporter cards in his first 2 picks.
Yeah, I would say Erica's Hospitality is probably actually the strongest supporter that isn't seeing play right now. It's actually like a pretty insanely strong card, and it's kind of crazy that it doesn't see much play, to be honest. I guess there's just not that much of a need for high support accounts when we've got access to like the Denays and stuff like that. But in this format where we don't have access to Dene, unless you're Aaron, Erica's is probably, I agree with it probably being the 3rd best supporter card to take behind Professor's Research and Cynthia. And Welder obviously is probably the only other one that competes with that, so he's just decided to go right ahead and take both of those right away. We know Mitch wants to lock in that Welder archetype right away, and we actually see the first few Pokemon he takes are a little bit interesting. He hasn't gone for like more of the standard fire Pokemon like you'd expect, like maybe Heatran being one of the go-to Pokemon, but he's actually decided to prioritize both the Arcanine and Salazzle, and I know Mitch is quite a fan of that Arcanine just in general because it is his favorite Pokemon, but I actually think it's not just bias of being his favorite Pokemon. I think it's actually super good in this draft. There's 120 damage for 3 energy, which obviously is accelerated by Welder. And what Arcanine does is it allows you to not only take 1 hit carries for 1 extra energy doing 190 damage, which we've already discussed is going to knock out a lot of Pokemon in this format, but also just the fact that it accelerates energy to the bench means that Arcanine's going to allow you to kind of try and power up 2 different attackers at the same time. And in a format where you have very limited access to Welder, having 2 attackers on the board powered at the same time is a super powerful thing to be able to do.
For sure. He also got like another great supporter a bit further down. He got both Cynthia, Caitlyn, Malolana, and Tag Call. Even further down, which is kind of crazy. And he also got the Jirachi skateboard package. So Mitch's consistency, especially in, I would say, the first like 11 picks, counting that Gossifleur because of how good that Gossifleur is in the early game, I think is fantastic. Gossifleur is similar to the Dunsparce that you have, Jordan, in that it can get 3 basic Pokemon down onto the bench immediately, which is pretty crazy.
Yeah, it doesn't allow you to switch into any of them, but obviously that's not really a relevant factor anyway. It's basically just there for that Search 3. So Gossifleur is probably the 2nd best tag, like Cool Family Pokemon, or at least tied for 2nd best. We even see the Blues Tactics as the 12th pick, which is actually another pretty underrated supporter card in this format. We've never seen it in Standard really, but because it's just too slow, like you don't want to play a card to help you on the following turn, but drawing up to 8 cards it's a pretty good effect in this format, I want to say. And especially when you've got that Jirachi Escape Ball package, I feel like you can have a lot of ways to like play down your hand and then take advantage of a big blues at the end of your turn.
I'll also say, like, obviously he's picked up a lot of the classic Firebox stuff, but an interesting double off that he was able to get quite late, I would say, in our draft at picks 24 and 25, I believe it's 24 and 20, it could be 25 or 26, is the Smooth Over Macargo into the Primate Wisdom Oranguru.
That's such a good combo.
Really good. We've seen that combo work incredibly well in Macargo GX decks, but it works very well in this Fire deck as well, just being able to always get the exact card you need, and then being able to, say, get the card you need, and then knowing the top card of your deck is also good, and then using something like Heat Factory to discard a Fire Energy and draw back into that card can be incredibly strong. You could also use a smooth over tactically. You could purposely, either with smooth over or Oranguru, put a card back on top of your deck if you know you might get Marnied. That was definitely a tactic that I saw a lot of players use with Oranguru and ADP Zacian, knowing that a lot of people played Marnie against them. So definitely could see that being a thing. He has the Ninetales for the Gust. Down the end of the draft is where things got a bit dicey for Mitch. I think he was kind of tossing up a few different options for his deck, and it all kind of got a bit muddled towards the end.
Yeah, it looks like he started trying to draft a whole bunch of different Stage 2 Pokemon, try and take advantage of, I believe, it's the Chandelure, which has a really strong attack, which can allow you to get all these different fast Stage 2 Pokemon into play. Could be a little gimmicky just because, obviously, it's quite a bit of setup and requires a lot of space, a lot of draft. Like, not only in your deck, but also there's a lot of space for your draft pick. But I think that his early draft is so strong that that might not matter. What do you call it? The Chandelure could be worth going for just because of how powerful it is. If he can pull off an engine that works well for it, then it's definitely worth going for. But even if he doesn't end up using that package, I think he's so many strong cards. If we go back towards the top of the draft again, some of the cards I think that work really well for him is he got a lot of really strong tool cards that I feel like tool cards were kind of underrated and underrepresented by a lot of people, but Mitch is one of the people who took advantage of some of the best tools in the game. We see not only the experience share, but also the wishful baton, which are going to help him keeping energy into play, and we're already just discussing how important it is to have a different flow of energy acceleration when Welder is going to be a little harder to access. Of course, once you get the smooth over Oranguru combo, he's got the Palpat and the Cynthia Caitlin, so he might be able to pull off a whole bunch of Welders anyway, but just in case he can't, he's also got the Mewtwo, I think, with Mind Report, so that's another way for him to recycle Welder. So he's got lots of access to Welder, which is really strong. He's also got the Duskstone Miss Magius combo, which is a very interesting idea. He's got a lot of these cool combo cards, such as the Miss Magius and Duskstone or the Jirachi Skateboard. So he's got a lot of really strong consistency cards. Obviously, the Big Charm as well is another really strong tool card that Mitch was able to find access to. And even, honestly, the Autopat is not a terrible option to go for. To flip a coin, I believe, to search for, I forget if it's a trainer or an item card. But,
yeah, I'm not 100% sure which one, but...
If it's a trainer, then... actually, I'm pretty sure it's not a trainer, because then it would obviously play with Welder. So it's probably an item card. But that's still pretty strong, especially with all of these really strong tool cards that he's able to draft.
Yeah, I think it's a very solid list. I know that at the end of the draft, Mitch was a bit annoyed because maybe he could have picked some other cards, but honestly, I do think he has a very consistent, strong list. Definitely, it looks like it's streamlined towards the Arcanine, the Heatran GX, and the Victini Prism Star being probably the big three attackers for Mitch's list, which I guess maybe is the only concerning part for me. We do know, especially after the IC, that Firebox has maybe 5 or 6 big attackers that it wants to use, and Mitch's deck at this stage, unless he adds in that Chandelure line, currently has maybe 3 big attackers that he has to rotate between, and if any of them are prized, given that he only gets access to 1 Heatran, 2 Arcanine, and 1 Victini Prism, that's 4 Pokemon in total of the big ones that he would probably want to be attacking with in the early stages of the game. So that could be an issue, but having something like Jirachi to open your board with can just be insanely good and can get you almost everything you need by your second or third turn.
Yeah, I definitely agree that could be a bit of a concern. It's probably the one thing that I would have liked to have seen him get towards the end was one more pretty strong GX fire Pokemon to attack with. I think that Ho-Oh GX is one that I personally think is Drummer does 180 damage, I think, for 4 energy, so that would have been a pretty solid option for him to go with as a backup to the Heatran.
Look, the attacker I'm very surprised that Mitch didn't draft, Jordan, is Turtonator. I think especially with things like Wishful Baton, Turtonator made a ton of sense. Like, it is just incredibly strong in this format, given that you don't have to waste as much energy as you did in the tag team format to get knockouts, and Turt still has a decent HP stat, so it shouldn't be getting knocked out incredibly easily. And plus, although the baton is good to keep energy on the board, sometimes you want a Pokemon like Turt to discard all those energies so that you can open up the Victini Prism Star play later in the game. So,
yeah, that's a good point. One card that I'm pretty surprised he drafted was, I think it was about the middle part, about draft 23, I think it is, where he picked the Crushing Hammer. If that Crushing Hammer was instead like a different GX attacker, I think he pretty much would have had everything he needs to make a really strong list. What I do think is going for Mitch, though, is we just said that he potentially could have wasted a whole bunch of picks towards the end. Obviously, the more cards that you play from this draft that you put into your deck, it means the less basic energy that you'll be adding. If you use like most of the cards, and obviously it means you're going to be having less energy in your deck. Whereas Mitch playing Fire, he might be advantaged by using like nothing but the cards to be picked in the first half of the draft, and just playing an insanely high Fire energy count because he's got that Salazzle and Factory, which you can use to draw 3 cards for Fire energy. He's got the Ninetales, obviously. He's got the Victini Prism, so Mitch could actually kind of be advantaged by just deciding not to play half of the cards in drafts and just playing with like 18 to 20 Fire Energy or something like that. Could actually be really strong in this format.
Oh yeah, 100%. I definitely think so. I just think the one thing maybe that like we agree that he's missing is either that extra GX, whether it be Ho-Oh or even Reshiram GX, could have been solid. And then also the Turtonator. I think just maybe a couple more attackers that didn't require any changes to the consistency of Mitch's list, which the evolution Pokemon would. I think just other basic attackers could have been really solid, but regardless, it's still a very solid Welder deck and is going to be very scary to go up against.
Yeah, I think his deck is going to function very well, and it's just going to come down to how much work can that Heatran and those Arcanines put into the deck. If they can put on enough pressure to just win games before their opponent can deal with them, then he's going to be in a really good spot. But if your opponent can deal with them, then he's going to be in a little bit of trouble because all of a sudden he's going to run out of attackers if his opponent's actually able to deal with the pressure he's putting out. So could be a little scary, but I think it's a strong list overall.
For sure. Well, that's going to do it for our draft recap. I actually have no idea how long this has gone on for. An hour and a half, Jordan. an hour and a half.
It's pretty in-depth, that's for sure. But hey, I think it's going to be really fun to see how this tournament ends up going. I had a lot of fun doing the draft, and I'd certainly be down to do this again sometime in the future.
Absolutely.
But yeah, we'll hopefully be able to get some games for this recorded as well. It's really interesting to see how this actually turns out.
I'll be planning to live-com all my games, and I know that Jordan has said that he's happy to send me through his game footage, and then I can maybe commentate over the top of that for his matchup. So you guys will see a lot of gameplay through that. The whole plan is that each of us is going to round robin against everybody else, so that there's no bias in the Swiss matchups of some decks having better matchups than others. You have to hope that your deck has been constructed well enough to beat everything else it's playing against. I'm not so confident with my list, but I'm sure Jordan's feeling a bit more confident, as his list does seem pretty well balanced against a lot of the meta. So we'll see what happens, though.
Hey, I'm not super confident, but I'm pretty happy with how... Honestly, I'm pretty happy with how most of our decks turned out, so it'll be really exciting to see who ends up coming out on top.
For sure. So I think that'll do it for this video. Thank you for being on here with me, Jordan, and discussing this stuff.
Not a problem, man. It was good.
Alright, and I guess the next time you will see us, we'll be doing some fun games with these lists and seeing how it goes. I think Aaron wants to play me soon. Oh man, I'm kind of dreading that matchup. His deck's looking pretty spicy, man, but we'll see what happens. That's going to do it for us, guys. We'll catch you in the next one.